paranoid. I don't believe in monsters or myths. What I am is a realist. And as such, the world can be a little dark.
I feel conflicted. Conflicted by the fact that I won't be able to review this game correctly, or conflicted that I won't know what to say. Even right now, I don't know how to make this intro, but we're here nonetheless, and we will review a game that I didn't think would get me this interested, Unsound Mind. But before going into it, what is Unsound Mind? To give a vague summary, you are someone named Desmond, a psychologist who seems to be in a rundown state of his apartment that is slowly breaking with a massive flood going on around the small town of Mutant Haven, and must listen to his patient's sessions by collecting their tapes to get an understanding of what's going on, what happened to them, and what to do next, while being followed by an unknown figure taunting him at every moment, to put it lightly. Think of it as a horror version of the Psychonauts, to some degree, with a hint of early Silent Hill. The gameplay comes down to 3 factors: exploration, puzzles, and gunplay. 2 of the 3 factors here are done so well, with exploration being great. All the areas with each of the levels will slowly reveal themselves the more you play it, feeling both big enough to wander around and point you towards the right direction without it feel like you're either going nowhere or going in circles. The maps for each of the levels are placed throughout certain locations in the level. You can't take them with you, but memorizing everything won't be an issue if you can keep track of where you are. Puzzles here are also nicely done. Nothing too head-scratching, but can still be clever with the way you gotta solve them, and can make you think outside the box the way the game does them. Just don't try to overthink them like me. Finally, the gunplay. It's okay to say at least. Out of the 5 weapons you do get in this game, the only 2 I do have an issue with are how both the pistol and the shotgun does sound when fired. They do get the job done with what they're meant to sound like when firing, but something about them doesn't sound impactful when they are being used. The same can also kinda be said when you do kill an enemy. I'm expecting some kind of oil drop or splat sound when I do kill these types of ink blots, but all they leave behind is a sizzle noise that I don't think someone would expect to hear when killing these enemies. But again, it's a minor complaint. Another gripe would be the pills upgrade, one of them being stealth. Now stealth in this game is a bit iffy to say it nicely. It's an option, but not usually the best one to go with, since these guys have the eyesight of an owl. They can spot you from a decent range, even if you're hiding behind an object. But why have stealth as an option if they can easily spot you? It makes sense for Genius level, with it being stealth based, but if it's only good for a single level, why even have it? I would change the stealth pills to be something that you would more commonly use throughout the game, like an ammo upgrade. Since you are always stocked with it, why not make it an upgrade to increase the amount you could carry for all your weapons? It will be more helpful in the long run than with stealth being an option. But let's finally talk about the game. The game starts with the player in the basement, and your first task is given to you: get out of the basement. While that is happening, a strange figure from afar is watching you, stalking you, leaving these notes behind. Once out of the basement and onto the top floor, the player gets a pretty unique way of seeing the logo. After that, we head to the main protagonist's office and we get a random phone call.
There he is. Long have I waited for this moment, to watch as you scramble for your last breath, as you try to make sense of your reality and the gravity it carries, pulling you down. Ooh, I can't contain my excitement. I will have you, Desmond Wales. I will have all of you.
When that's done, the apartment halls have already started to change, going towards an ominous white glowing door. Once entered, the player will enter the homes dedicated to that person's color, with the protagonist being white and its patient's colors being purple, green, red, and grayish blue. The main idea is to grab a tape from your patient's home. These tapes being past recording sessions with both yourself and your patients. Once put and played into the cassette player in your office, the office will start rewinding backwards just like a tape, and once it's stopped, the office door glows in the same color as both the tape and the door we saw outside of the apartment doors. Once entered, the player will then be transported from the apartments to a location dedicated to that person from the tape. For example, the supermarket is dedicated towards Virginia, and the falls being dedicated towards Lucas. But going back to our main protagonist, when going through his tape, we now know a bit more with him and what's going on here. We're someone called Desmond Wales, a psychologist who seems to be losing his mind, having the same side effect as his patients, them seeing unusual patterns, having feelings of both dread and fear, and all of them dying in some way. After that, we head back to the elevator with our first encounter with the Common Scouts, them being these life-size ink blots. As much as I don't agree with that dying sound effect, I can't deny the way they both move and the sounds from them can give any first-timers seeing these things goosebumps, with how sporadic they do move and the sounds they do make when they're close to you can give any first-timers, as I said before, goosebumps. After that, we head towards the ground level, which serves as both the main hub and the only way to access our patient's apartments. Only is blocked by some key objects that can only be removed by gaining those key items or weapons from the previous level to move on to the next level. Now the main hub here is great for anyone curious enough to both wonder and find for themselves, because if you look hard enough, you'll find two weapons and an item you can keep throughout the game, them being the pistol, the shotgun, and the gas mask, with the pistol being the easiest one to both find and make. However, with the other two, you'll need to either jump through a few hoops or think outside the box to know where to get it. Final positive will be our stalker friend, called Rainbow. Not only can he both stalk and watch us, but he can also tiptoe towards us randomly from behind if nothing does happen. Unknown how long it does take for him to come out and do it, but if you're fast enough on your reaction, you can make him disappear while him getting close to you. Now, the only constructive negative that I could give is that I wish that the bench in the basement would have gotten more use throughout the game than just something to build the pistol early on in the game and to never return back to the basement. The only suggestion that I could give is that maybe it could also be used as an upgrade for your guns. Like, after you beat a manifestation, you could use that manifestation as some sort of passive effect or damage for your weapons. Like using Virginia's manifestation on the pistol will make it pierce through enemies, or using Max's manifestation on the shotgun will make the enemies be pushed back. But again, this is just a suggestion or an idea to get more use of the bench than it being used only one time to build the pistol. With the explanation out of the way, let's get into the real first level, that being Virginia's level. This would be the scariest level in the game and a good way to slowly introduce how these levels will play out. You first get a glimpse of the manifestation. From the tapes and the notes in the level, you get an idea of what type of manifestation or theme the monsters are, with Virginia being a mix of both anxiety and trauma, getting a key item / weapon that set them down this path, with Virginia being a glass shard from a broken mirror, being able to cut, slice, and see things not visible to the naked eye, and finally confront the manifestation in a final area of the level to help them finally move on. So let's finally talk about the positives. Starting off being the new weapon or key item you do get, the Mirror Shard. This is your best friend in terms of finding key items, pills, and enemies within the level, and is used greatly here. With how cramped everything is in this level, and with the way this manifestation works, you always wanted to keep it by your side. Second positive would be Virginia's manifestation, the Watcher, a Medusa-like monster that has both sharp eyesight and can go through walls and objects, but the player can be clever with where she can be in the level, from looking at the shard to looking up at the lights to see where she is, or beyond looking as me with her spawning right above you. The third positive would be again, Rainbow. This guy right here, as much as we did see him in the main apartment, from leaning and stalking us to even tiptoeing to you randomly from behind, he's also going to be here to stop you from going forward in most of these levels, with him either roadblocking you, trying to trap and kill you, or even being himself, with him coming out of nowhere to spook the player. Finally, after beating the level and going back to your patient's home with the key item, you either unlock more of their homes, a room you couldn't get into the first time, or even a metal box. Doing this in Virginia's home, for example, you unlock the bathroom, which contains both a washout test and a vinyl. These vinyls being the personalities and struggles of the patients put into a song, with Virginia's vinyl called A Dollhouse. One thing I do love about this song is if you do pay attention to the lyrics, it describes your life before the accident. Hearing this song and reading the notes around the level, you realize how much both she and her life has changed because of this accident. Who knows what her life could have been if it didn't happen. Now my only issue with this level is that I wish you didn't get the pistol so early on in the game, since this defeats the purpose of the shard being an effective tool against the Watcher. Since if you are being chased by her and manage to look at her with it just enough, you can make her run away from you, but it seems like shooting her with a pistol would make her disappear, which really hurts the Mirror Shard being a good defensive tool, because the pistol can easily get the job done faster than the mirror. The only suggestion I could make is that make it so the bullets have no effect on the body, but you could shoot off the mask, temporarily stunning her so the player could either get away from her or use the shard to make her run away. Overall, this level is a great way to introduce anyone to this game and let them know what they should expect for the upcoming levels. From the supermarkets and into the shores, we now arrive at Alan's level, and this will have to be the most interesting level of the bunch, with the way it shows the effect of having constant nightmares shape a person's life, and the consequences of seeing more than you would have expected. So let's start with the positives, starting with the flare gun. I believe this gun has both the best sound effect and the best reload animation in the game. The flare gun is more or less similar to a grenade launcher, but without the giant splash damage they usually have on them. The second positive would be Alan's manifestation, the Shade. His fascination and fear of the dark turned into a terrifying moving sinkhole that will pull anything and everything in its path down with it, and when put into gameplay, this thing is no joke. If I were to describe what it's like to go against it, it's like going against a shark. The entire level is an ocean, and you're the only fish out here, with the Shade seeing you as its next meal. The best way to deal with the Shade is with anything that has a bright light, including both the flashlight and the flare gun. While the flare gun can get rid of them faster, it's very limited on ammo, so you can't waste them like candy. While the flashlight does take a bit to fully hurt it, you won't be running out of it as fast as the flare. But going back to the design of the Shade, can we appreciate how eerie of a concept this thing is? A moving sinkhole that will drag anything down with it. From afar, it seems like some sort of giant puddle, and when using the middle shot to see that manifestation, it's like seeing someone trying to swim, and when getting close to it, you see a figure coming out from the puddle, reaching out to grab you, pulling you down with it, almost like seeing a shark fin suddenly come out of the water near you, catching you off guard, and you got nowhere to run. The third positive would be the journey you go through at this level. Let me explain. In this level, you need to go to the lighthouse to replace the light bulb inside of it, since the current one is red, representing Alan's current view on the world around him. Going near the lighthouse and reading all the notes, newspaper clips, and etc., you'll get a good idea of what happened to Alan. During one of his lookouts, he notices an unknown ship near the docks, even though it said nothing about that ship from the logs, when all of a sudden, a blackout happened that made the ship crash. Wanting to help and see if everyone's okay, he heads down to sea, but what he saw down there was something that really scared him. From our guess, he must have gotten intoxicated by the purple gas that was leaking from the ship, making him see all sorts of crazy hallucinations, making him run back in panic to call Desmond.
You've reached the office of Dr. Desmond Wales. Please leave a message after the tone.
Doc? Doc, are you there? Why would you be there? It's the middle of the goddamn night. This is bad, man. I don't even know what's happening. I swear, Doc, I didn't even know it was supposed to come through.
Which in the end, gone where he is today.
I found one of those flare guns. Someone must have dropped it. Gotta fight darkness with light. How could I not see it sooner? Gotta fight. Wait, they're here. They're here. The men in black. Weird. That guy Nygaard is here. I've seen him around. Around you, man. I gotta warn them, Doc. They don't know about the monsters.
Finally, Alan's final, called Bottom of the Pit.
I'm a little bit anxious. I'm a little unsure of where to go. I'm a little kid swallowed by the shadows in the ocean, and I know it's a little bit daunting. It's a little bit scary when I'm alone. It's a little bit dark outside when I'm uptight. I call you on the phone. When we hang up, I stay awake for a while, wondering if what you say is true. I am flawed but fixable when I manage some shut-eye. Oh, for all I know, I might be slumbering, although I'd rather be dead on your couch. In my bed, in my head, there's a light, but it's red, and I wander till waters bend around me and surround me until I quit. What's this shining at the far end of the road? Oh, I admit I'd rather see the dark end of a tunnel than the bottom of the pit.
Even though he's a flawed man, wanting to succumb to both his curiosity and fear in the dark, there's still some hope he's holding on to for the other side, a light to keep him going. With the positives out, let's dig into the negatives, one of them being the new enemies you'll be facing throughout the game, the Spitters. Even though they're similar to the Scouts in terms of help size, they're quite the opposite to them, with the Scouts running towards you while the Spitters will move away or dodge left and right to make you miss your shots on them. And they're never alone. There will always be a pair of Scouts with them, meaning you have to deal with both what's in front and what's ahead of you, make them usually unfun to go against. The second negative will be the lack of shortcuts. In most of the other levels, once you are done with a certain section of that level, a doorway or even a pathway will be open to help traverse the map and to cut any filler out of the way. But with this level, I can only remember one shortcut, and that was near the early part of the level. You just have to pay attention to the environment to notice it. Overall, I can see this being everyone's favorite level, from dealing with the shade to see how it all unfolds in the end. I can easily see this as someone's favorite level, but sadly this isn't my favorite level. That crown goes to the next level. So now we move on to my favorite level of the game, Max's level, which I believe serves as both a good example on how to slowly open a level without being too overwhelming to newcomers, and how each part of the level serves the right balance between both being small yet condensed. To start off, the early part of this level is honestly quiet. Aside from the usual scouts roaming around the place, there's no sign of this person's manifestation to be seen or be found anywhere. Unlike the other manifestation that would make their appearance by being seen from afar, this one is yet to be seen, making it feel like a ghost town aside from the roars that can be heard every now and then. But eventually you track where the sounds are coming from which leads into a blocked up cave. Going further into it, you find the manifestation, and I believe this thing has the best entrance to any of the manifestations. Once out of the cave, we now get to the second positive, that being the Bull. A manifestation of Max's rage and anger issues combined into an abomination of both part beast and part machine that will charge at anything that gets in his way. This being even has its own terror radius theme, kinda similar to the ones that you hear from the many killers from Dead by Daylight. The third positive will be the areas you go to in this level, since there are 3 main areas you will go through, from the train tracks to the old factory, and the final area being the quarry. You will be in these areas for a good amount of time without it feeling like it's being dragged out, especially with the old factory being a good example. In it, you'll need to gather 3 different compounds to make the new item. With it, you'll be able to make the bow follow you at will. Each of the items being on a different floor in the factory, and each of them having an interesting obstacle to deal with, but once dealt with, they'll need to be each be grabbed and be put into this machine to create the new item. Finally, Max's final, called Is It Me? I love the fact that you can tell in the early part of the song that he's putting on a thick facade, almost like he's uncomfortable with it with how slow he's singing it, which slowly turns into his real expression being more faster and more comfortable with it. Now, a negative that I could give is that I think that the new item you do get is a bit underwhelming, that being the pills. The way that the pills work are like this. They have 2 uses, the first one being you can throw them to be a distraction, similar to someone throwing a pebble out of nowhere, and it can be used to detonate this purple liquid that will be lying around the level. Now that does sound good on paper, but that's where the problem begins. It sounds good, but when put into action, it becomes something you don't want to mainly use them for, since if you are in a chase with the usual scouts and they're hot on your tail, throwing a pill in front of them won't stop them from keep on chasing you. It can be used well if you're not in a chase, but why even bother doing that? Now the second use is the one most people tend to use them for. If you eat one of them, you'll gain both a small health boost and an increase to your running speed with unlimited stamina for a small amount of time. This is the one that everyone mostly uses it for, but if I were to make a slight change to the pills, I would get rid of the distraction part of the pills and make it so if you were to throw one of them, the one that got hit by it would start attacking the other scouts. Think of it similar to how Hypnotize worked in Bioshock 2. Overall, I still think this is one of the best levels in the game, but the way it slowly opens the level without it being dragged on or being frustrating to deal with, which is funny enough one of the problems that the next level does have. Now we get to Lucas's level, and this will have to be my least favorite level of the game, which is a shame due to the fact that both the theme and the music connected to Lucas is the best in the game, while everything else around it is the worst. But before we talk about that, let's talk about the positives. Starting off, the theme. So the theme of the level is PTSD. Since Lucas was a war veteran, you can imagine how the level could play out with this theme, with you popping in and out of both the war and the level randomly without you seeing it coming, or even as subtle as some balloons popping to set it off. And it doesn't come off as predictable or even something you could see coming from a mile away. just like PTSD in real life. The second positive would be the radio. The radio works like a short-range sniper, able to instantly kill an enemy or stun the bigger ones, and is able to either activate or deactivate anything electronic based, and most of the stuff in this level will have to do with the radio, like these little satellite dishes that are around the map, and when interacting with the radio, they will tell the player Lucas's time at the war and what he experienced. Finally, Lucas's final, called Me and the Boys.
Got plans for what comes later after the war. Got names for our band and jobs for each other. It feels really good. Why I'm crashing down. Everyone's crashing, but as long as we're together. The drummer plays a beat too long, and the whole damn song starts to fall apart. Ooh, by show of hands, the group disbands, and they won't be back by popular demand.
This to me is the most subtle song from the game. Once you have played this level, hear Lucas's time at the war, and listen to the lyrics, you will understand everything with the song. Now let's talk about the negatives. Starting with the map. This level is huge. Like if you were to compare this level's size to the others, you'll notice a size difference. But just because it's bigger doesn't mean it's better. Max's level is still the perfect example of slowly opening the map. But with this one, once a certain sequence has happened, the map is completely open for you to wander, and I feel like you could have maybe shrunk the map just a tad bit since you're only going by these places only once. Granted, they do give you these pills every now and then to help get through the map, but that's more or less a band-aid fix than a solution to the map size, so there's no need to make it this big. The second problem is the conclusion of the Empty. The Empty being this blue angel that's been helping you all the way back in Alan's level. The reason why I put her in the negatives is that both the player and Desmond have no connection to this character. Unlike the patients who we get to know through their level, with her, you only just start to know her at the end of Lucas's level, and once we're done with that, we're more or less like,
who the fuck is Rose?
But the one way we do get to know more about her is with her vinyl. Hers being hidden in a freshly made grave that belongs to Rose, and the song is called Whatever It Takes.
Wake, try to be good for goodness sake. Try to learn from the past, from your mistakes. Do it over, whatever it takes. Oh my, I never could ever calculate how deep the rabbit hole, the lives it stole, the young and old, couldn't hold, bought and sold. The radio man from the wall. I wake here again, now and then. Take all that I have to give, and when I find a time, reason and rhyme, payment for
her song does subtly explain what she is doing here, hoping that she can finally correct her mistakes as she sees her current form as punishment or payment for what she has done. Finally, let's talk about the big elephant in this level, Lucas's manifestation, the Flash. I feel like this is a giant missed concept in my eyes, since this is a manifestation of his PTSD from his time in the military as both a sniper and radio operator. You would expect some sort of monster that might hide within trees or mountains, purposely missing his shots as a warning. His introduction suggests that it might hide within the trees, where the only thing standing out is the giant spotlight as the head, making you have to pay attention to both the environment and the sounds around you. But in execution, he walks up to you and starts shooting you out in the open, with his bullets having big splash damage. Only 2 words can describe this. Not fun. No one likes being shot at by something bigger than them, especially right in front of them. So let's redo this bunker sequence. What if there was some sort of spotlight behind you when you're restoring power into the bunker door, and without you noticing, that spotlight is the Flash staring right at you, making anyone startled at first, and then they try to outrun it, only for it to start following you, watching you. Similar to a scene in The Iron Giant where Hogarth gets startled by the Iron Giant, trying to run away from him, only for him to slowly fall right behind him. If the Flash was more like that in this level, it would brought more of a fear factor of he could be anywhere without you noticing. Overall, as I said, this is my least favorite level, but it shows off the effect of PTSD really well, which is why it saddens me to see it in this way. Finally, after dealing with Lucas's level at midnight hits, we get a call from an old pal Rainbow.
And time. You crazy son of a gun. You did it. Now we can settle this mano a mano, don't you think? I'm leaving you something by the entrance to your building. Consider it a parting gift.
After going down to the ground level to get the gift, we get his tape, put into the cassette player and play it, but the office door doesn't glow like the other tapes, but rather the closet door right next to your desk does. Once entered, we see Agent Rainbow on a piano, showing off in style.
All eyes on me, now open wide. You know what's wrong with you, a lethal case of deja vu. I hear them, oh, here comes the Savior, who can break these thoughts away from me. School my head on right from honorant feet. Ready.
All of that's over, we go through another door into this bizarre level where nothing makes sense, filled with toxic clouds, rocks, and barrels floating around the level with some cassette players around. Playing it, you'll finally get some answers on who Agent Rainbow is.
Long have I waited for this moment, this spotlight, this stage. A stage made of mistakes, misfortune, and regret. There won't be an encore, only sweet, eternal death. But before that, congratulations are in order. Way to go, Desmond. You made it. You failed all the way to the top. You were right, you know. Your patients weren't bad people, but they were weak. Virginia could not overcome her watcher, nor could Alan his shade. Max lost hard to his bull. Lucas gone in a flash. And you succumbed to me. So why have I been sneaking around, causing chaos? What's my motive? who I work for? Well, I'm not some government agent. I'm your Agent Rainbow. I'm everything you don't want to be. Your fears, your guilt, your paranoia, given form. And my plan? To run you ragged, chip away at your psyche, to wear you down to this. It was fated to end this way. You, stuck in your drug-addled mind, withering away as it shuts down. You're the captain of the SS Wales, and you're sinking. There is no escape. Soon you'll lose all control, and when that happens, I will have all of you.
After that, we get to the end only for the door to be destroyed by the giant cassette tape in the background, caused by a giant Agent Rainbow hiding behind it, wanting to finally end things once and for all.
Not this time. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, I present to you Death of a Therapist, Act 1, Tapes of Terror, featuring...
To defeat him, the player must collect all of his patient's tapes used throughout the game, use the tools they found when the patient's levels to pass through those tape puzzles, play them when certain locations onto the giant tapes to slowly weaken Rainbow until Desmond can stand up against him, where the others couldn't. I love that the more and more you start to weaken Rainbow, more and more the giant cassette tapes for your patients start crumbling into nothing but parts. I know it's not something most people would pay attention to with how much is happening at once, but it's something I just wanted to point out. It's a neat eye candy for people like me seeing how much destruction is happening around them. But if I were to pick a negative aspect of this level, it would be that I wish that the manifestation of your patience were also with the tape player than just the tape player itself. Like some sort of ghost that's a mixture of both the human side and the manifestation side, either near it or even holding the tape player, to give the player more reasons to defeat him. And near the final part where you need to play the rainbow tape, it would have been cool to see those manifestations help you climb up top to face Rainbow personally. But it all ends in a cheesy one-liner and a grand debate of our Agent Rainbow.
I'm afraid our time is up. The next time you want to talk to me, make an appointment.
After being Agent Rainbow for good, and taking this for door if you get the chance, we go through the door and are now back in Desmond's office to finally wrap things up. But before that, we get a key to open the locked bedroom door that was in Desmond's room. Opening it, we find the room to be covered in black fog, the same black fog that was seen all around in Alan's house. After dealing with that, we get notes and a letter showing how Desmond got to the self-doubt and depressed state. After that, we get Desmond's final, called Here Comes the Savior.
I don't know
both his inner demon scene and now Desmond's scene is a very noticeable change and state of who's in control. From before, our Ancient Rainbow was singing the song on the piano at a very fast pace, showing just how close he was from taking over Desmond's mind. But on the vinyl, he's now slower pace in terms of singing, showing that Desmond is finally controlling the state of his mind. After that, Desmond will head up top of the apartment to say his goodbye to an old friend and finally be ready for what's coming. But
life doesn't work that way. Getting rid of me will be the challenge of a lifetime. You may have won the battle, but you've only saved yourself. Agent Rainbow is still out there, and you are powerless to stop what's coming.
Don't listen to him. He's afraid because he knows exactly what you're capable of.
What am I capable of?
Time will tell. Patience and grace.
So, this is goodbye?
You said goodbye before. I wouldn't lose any sleep on it.
You're a real cool cat.
Yeah. I know.
overall, I didn't think this game would win me over and get me this interested in the story, characters, everything. While there are some things I can easily nitpick, the pros outweigh the cons with the way the game handles its theme without it being overloaded or even forced. Something I would not have expected when I first got this game for free on the Epic Store. I first came into this game expecting to waste my time and came out with opposite expectation, being hooked, wanting more, and even 100%ing it on my third run playing this game, and that's rare for me to do. What else could I even say? If you like horror games that make you think you're seeing things, paying cats, or even chuckle at some of the jokes here.
What?
Desmond, this is your father calling. How are you, my boy? We haven't heard from you in a while. Your mother and I, we just wanted to call and tell you that, you're a disappointment, son, and we're leaving you nothing when we croak.
Gee, thanks, Dad.
This game's for you.